Hello, 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 and welcome back to Core Motivations Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Connolly. I'm a certified Enneagram coach and a Symbis marriage coach. Perhaps this is your first time joining us. I'm so happy you found us. And for those returning, I couldn't be more excited that you've committed to growth through this podcast. So thanks for being here. First, I got an update for you, and it's great news. We have sold the house. What a long journey. We put the house on the market at the beginning of October 2025. And as of last Friday, a week ago, there are new owners. New owners! That's exciting. Okay, so the question is, am I sad? I'm not sure. Maybe it's more relief. I mean, no longer do we have to work with a person of lesser character, in parentheses, our realtor. We no longer have to pay utilities and a house payment times 2. But now that a week has passed, I can say that I'm feeling more peace and even a little bit of excitement because of the things that we'll get to focus on here at our new space. This place we are purposing to make a home and a sanctuary. I think I could call it celebrating. When we got the official news of the close of the house, we went for sushi and reflected on the last 5 months. Okay, maybe not that serious. So at sushi dinner, we got to talking with the owner of the restaurant. And I tell you, she was so sweet. She brought us a bottle of sparkling cider because she knew that we didn't drink. And we got to cheers with a big sigh. And that's a wrap, folks. Saturday night, as we were settling in more to our new town, we found a local dairy-free ice cream spot. Oh, so yummy. I have to go back. I will keep you posted on our next chapter. Can I also kind of deviate a little bit and do a little real talk? I'm kind of glad that yesterday I didn't record because I was feeling some sadness. Our daughter, well, we live pretty far from her. And our relationship is, well, I don't know a word for it other than it's broken. It's far from being together, and I don't really know what the word is, but it's not what I want as a parent. But it got me reflecting on so many things. We think about the way that we were parented. And in my situation, my parents didn't really know how to parent, at least at the point that I became preteen and a teenager and even as an adult. And when I say parents, because unfortunately my dad wasn't around a whole lot for all of the adult choices that they made, for good or for bad. No judgment there. So when I say parent, I'm talking about my mom. And I think one of the greater disadvantages for me is that she didn't set good examples of what it looks like to be a parent. And so then I become a parent, and because of the things that I experienced as a kid, all I kept thinking in my mind is, I'm not going to do what was done to me. I'm not going to raise my daughter the same way. And the truth is that I had no other examples. I had none of what it looked like to be a healthy parent, to be a good listener and a good provider and, discipline in the right way. I didn't have those examples. And so here we are all these years later, and I'm seeing some of the things on repeat that happened during my younger years happening with my daughter and I. And it just is so frustrating and sad because, well, the frustration comes from me not being able to, in real time, not be the same way that I was raised. And to, say things like, this is just the way it is, or when I was a kid, or when I was a teenager, or when I was whatever, fill in the blank, I was able to do A, B, C, D, whatever it was. I think the story that I think about was, at 16, well, you don't know this, but at 16, I found myself being on my own as an adult. And there I was. I had a job. I had to leave school, but I had a job and I had a place to live. And when I have these conversations with my daughter, and don't get me wrong, she's employed and has a place to live and, doing all those adulting things. But I think that when there's something that isn't going right in her life, I compare the things that I was able to do in that time with what she's doing or the decisions that she's making, instead of just being somebody that is present and showing up and listening. Okay, so it's great that I am learning those things at my age, but where I struggle is that in real time, not listening to the past, not listening to the voices in my head on repeat, but just being a safe person for my daughter. And I think my greatest fear is that I won't get another chance. I won't get another opportunity to be the person she needs me to be. Anyways, growing up is hard. Being a good person is hard. Being a parent is even harder. Although I have to say, it is such a blessing and the best gift ever to be able to have a child. But again, it is really hard because you're learning how to do all these things in real time. There is no there's no training class. There's no, you know, do push-ups and sit-ups and run for this amount of time and now you're a professional athlete. There's nothing like that for parenting. And there certainly wasn't all these things that people have at their ready, the interweb and people's examples. I didn't have that. And none of these things are excuses, but they are my truth. I don't know if she listens to this, but I truly am sorry that the things that I thought were right turned out to be debilitating. And I really hope that she finds a way to overcome those challenges and find the healthy ways of navigating life and finding space for us to reconnect. Anyways, thanks for letting me have a little real talk time. It's definitely something that weighs on me. So I appreciate you all who are listening for giving me that safe space. Well, let's move on. Where did we leave off? Oh, right. During our last time together, we talked about self-care strategies for 2026. And specifically, we were talking about breath work. And I would like to continue down that path. Are you ready to keep going? Perfect. I knew you would say yes. Well, let's get into it. I always purpose to find those connectors, those ways that relate to each Enneagram type, because that is some of the core of this podcast. See what I did there? Core motivations. Haha. Well, we've done it again. The question that is on my mind is, how would each Enneagram type navigate or utilize breathwork? Last season, we talked about centers, the gut, the head, and the heart. So here's a splash of what centers of alignment are, also known as centers of intelligence. So centers are the place internally that each person, or in this case, Enneagram type, such as you and I, feel the feels and how we process information through our chief bias. So, for example, there's something called selective perception. So, it's where a person tends to only notice information that supports their current narrative, or something like information filtering, where a person will filter experiences through lenses shaped by past beliefs, emotions, and social conditioning, which I think I just kind of touched on a little bit with sharing some of my heart challenges. And this chief bias also comes out of something called echo chambers, where it leads to favoring sources that align with existing political or social views, for example. So, centers of alignment or intelligence is where alignment is the process of integration through each of these centers, the thinking, the feeling, and the doing. For example, pause and ask the question, what am I feeling, thinking, or doing? You can also identify, can I be analyzing too much or acting too quickly? Reflection, 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 right? Purposely bringing the two prominent centers. So if you're, for example, analyzing or thinking too much or acting too quickly, that when we bring those two centers into focus, what we're doing is teaching our brain to be fully aware. That's how we make that jump and change, not necessarily getting rid of chief bias. It's getting connected with, where do they come from and how are we responding in a particular situation to that bias. And I just want to encourage you to go back to previous episodes, actually last season, where we talk about centers of alignment. It can help understand a little bit. We go more into depth with centers of alignment. Okay, so the gut, the head, and the heart centers. Let's look at each Enneagram type, and there's 3 types that are grouped together. So all 9 types fit into a certain or specific center. So 8, 9s, and 1s, they fit into the body center, where it's instinctive and their gut that they're responding. So these types tend to be in their bodies, but need to release that tension, anger, or apathy. So I just want to remind us again that we're talking about breathwork exercises and how each type can use a specific breathwork to work through. And remember, 8s, 9s, and 10s are working through that release of tension, anger, and apathy. So let's look at type 8. And remember again, they're the protector. So they benefit from deep belly breathing to soften their protective armor and connect with vulnerability. I also want to add in here, try to be aware of each of these types and think about, how does this speak to me? How do I resonate with what's being said? Type 9, they're also called the peacemaker. And if they use an invigorating technique like something called breath of fire to overcome apathy, increase energy, and engage with uncomfortable emotions, they can make that shift. Now, some of these breathing techniques that sound like something you've never heard before, I will be linking some video examples of these different type of breath work in the show notes. So look for those. Okay. Then type 1, which is also part of the instinct or gut center. They're known as the perfectionists and could benefit from utilizing slow, structured breath work like box breathing to calm inner anger and relax their rigid, judgmental patterns. And we talked about box breathing last season, but there's a video I'm going to include that shows how to go through this process of box breathing. Did you know that the Navy SEALs and high stakes professionals use box breathing technique? I thought that was really interesting. Okay, so our next group, they fall under the heart center or feeling. That's types 2, 3, and 4. So these types often use breath to connect with their true emotions rather than focusing on how they appear to others. I find that when I am having a moment, if you will, I do these big sighs. Anyhow, type 2, they are also known as the helper. And again, that's where I fall under. If you focus on belly breathing to stay grounded in your own needs, rather than automatically taking on the emotions of others, you can help shift. And I also found an example of belly breathing. Heads up, it's a little clinical, but it works. So type 3, the achiever. The suggestion here is that you would use deep, slow exhales to pause your nonstop doing and in turn reconnect with your authentic being. And then finally, in this group, type 4, also known as the individualist, when they employ calming rhythmic breathing to manage emotional volatility and focus on staying present without becoming overwhelmed by those intense feelings, they too, or you, can have that shift. And I'm talking about not just the moments when things are intense. Perhaps these are things that you could try at the beginning of your day or when you're taking a break during the day, and especially at night. So there's lots of different ways in which you can utilize these breathworks examples. Okay, last group. We have the type 5, 6, and 7, and they operate in the head center or the thinking. These types use breath to move out of ruminating stories into their bodies. So type 5, they're the investigators. So when they use deep inhalation to help expand and feel comfortable occupying space rather than withdrawing into their own head. So what about type 6, the loyalist? When they use solar plexus breathing, it's this slow exhale through pierced lips. It can help manage fear, anxiety, and even distrust. There is a video for the solar plexus breathing in the show notes. So type 7, and this is the last grouping, the enthusiasts. When you use deep grounding breaths, it can reduce the urge to move to the next thing and stay in the now, in the moment. Now, again, I know I've said it several times, but I will link in the show notes all of the videos that I found. And of course, if you find something better, go for it. and maybe even share it on core motivations underscore coach, which is our page on Instagram for others to see. As a giver, an Enneagram 2, although I have to be honest, I still wrestle with whether I truly am a 2. And I often feel like I operate in my wing 1. If you're not sure what wings are, we talk about it in season 1. So check that out too. I'm not so good at the boundaries, meaning I often put others before me and my needs. However, Enneagram has taught me to identify the things in my main type and live in healthy ways, which is so easy breezy, right? Can you relate? With that, there is other self care that I want to shift towards and share with you. It's known as low pressure mornings, and they're surrounded by soft goals and things that are low stimulation and even utilize digital boundaries. I use that particular one at night or when I really need to focus on me. So I set limits on my screen time, no longer having access unless I override them, which I used to do. But I'm pretty good at not doing that. Once I set those limits, I just let it ride. I'll even put my phone on do not disturb. So here's some examples of low pressure mornings or low stimulation. And a great example came from an article about low dopamine morning routines. So instead of a typical alarm, there's something called a sunrise lamp. Have you heard of that? A sunrise lamp or a wake up lamp is a specialized alarm clock that mimics a natural sunrise. And so what happens is that it gradually increases light intensity from a warm amber to a bright white light. It facilitates a gradual, less abrupt awakening, helping to regulate the circadian rhythms, and it in turn reduces morning grogginess. Now, I might not need a sunrise lamp as I have a golden retriever, and he definitely helps me wake up and start my routine. So it looks a little something like a breezy tail, followed by an impromptu cuddle and a slipper that he has in his mouth for comfort, for his, not mine. And then we get up. This article suggests, in addition to this light alarm as opposed to a traditional, is fresh air, water first before coffee or tea, and a high protein breakfast. I'm still working on the high protein breakfast to start the day. I think I wait a little too long. Now, I've been working with a naturopathic doctor, and I have to say that she says all the same things that I'm talking about right now. So I think it's safe to say that it's confirmed. I try to wait at least 30 minutes before drinking coffee and start drinking my water first. That's the first thing. Well, before I do any of that, I do get fresh air. So I guess really the order is that I cuddle with my doggo, then fresh air, followed by water, no phone, then coffee, more fresh air, breakfast, and then a walk, more fresh air. I recently started opening all the windows and doors because you know how when the house is all closed up at night and you wake up in the morning, it just kind of has that stale, closed up house smell? And I just want to get it out. It's hard to get fresh air in the house. So I take advantage of that in the morning, even if it's only for a short time. I remember a podcast where Rachel Hollis was talking about that as part of her morning routine, and this was some time ago. And if you don't know who Rachel Hollis is, you really should. I'll link her info in the show notes as well. But she talked about how opening the windows and doors, it was part of her morning routine. Now, just a little information about Rachel Hollis. She's a podcaster, a speaker, an author, and she's about all things betterment, truth talking, exploring women's health in all capacities, women supporting women. great love, and so much more. Additionally, she's a keynote speaker. In fact, there's a conference in Texas coming up, but I heard it was sold out. But I'm also sure there are more to come, so look for that. Wow, show notes are going to be loaded with information. What can I say except you're welcome? So, low dopamine mornings really can create a space of slow, purposed movement and thought. There are so many things happening, well, for each of us, right? That to start a morning with a few of these things can get you off to a successful day. However, you measure success. That is one of my goals, is to change the way I measure success. Consider these suggestions as something that helps you think about you and reset the reset button. Because truth is, you need to put on your oxygen mask first and then help others. Now, if you know anything about me, and I'm sure that everyone is learning, I can't leave out the healing that can come from a deeper reset in your relationship with God or within your spiritual space. I read an article that talks about ways to reset with spiritual healing. I really like this idea of attitude of gratitude. You know what it reminds me? When we were working on filling our toolbox with self care techniques and self love, we talked about our 5 good, which is basically a list of gratitudes, things that you are looking for that were good within your day. The spiritual aspect of self care reset first is that we don't have to be grateful for the problems. And I really think that that's a misconception, that if we're not being grateful for this opportunity to learn a lesson, then somehow we're not being grateful for God and his solution to the ultimate problem of sin. We can start from the habit of thanking God for provision. I'm going to attach some biblical references while we practice this attitude of gratitude. So, first, his promise of protection. If you want to hear more about that, look up Proverbs 18:10. His promise of purpose can be seen in Romans 8:28. His promise of comfort is in Psalm 23:4. His promise of belonging, Matthew 19:14. His promise of support, Zephaniah 3:17. His promise of leadership, you can find that in Isaiah 40, verse 11. And finally, his promise of wisdom, which you can find in James 1:5. I know that there's a lot of scripture that can point you to these things: protection, purpose, comfort, belonging, support, leadership, and wisdom. So take the time to seek those understandings. I know that maybe this attitude of gratitude for you isn't about God. So I just want to encourage you, find what works for you and press in. For me, I know that when I'm outwardly about my gratitude for the one who provides, I find I'm more at peace within. And it shows. It permeates. Of course, all good things or change for the good, it comes with practice. We don't wake up in the morning and have it all figured out and that we're perfect as all the things, because practice is progress, right? And we talked a little bit about this, but soft goals. We replace strict, stressful resolutions with gentle intentions. There's also something called sensory-based care, where we're utilizing calm scents or soothing music or even tactile experiences like soft fabrics or a warm bath to reduce anxiety. There's also the low pressure mornings, that soft, slow start. So no phone zone, keeping the phone in another room or in grayscale for the first hour to avoid those dopamine spikes. And of course, there's the hydrate and light. So drinking water and getting natural sunlight before caffeine. And then the gentle movement of stretching or light yoga rather than high intensity workouts. And again, these are low dopamine strategies, right? So creating a slow routine, allowing time for a warm shower or quiet breakfast. And then the digital boundaries, setting strict limits on or taking breaks from social media and news consumptions to help reduce that mental overload. And try not to do all of them at the same time, because I think that is counterintuitive. Remember that sleep hygiene is essential. So by treating sleep as a health priority, where we're including cognitive shuffling, so visualizing words to fall asleep and removing screens 1 hour before bedtime, I can tell you that really does work. And then, of course, there's the people connections, that these are things that can continue to help you move towards this shift. So, such as community-based care, where we're investing time in building deep, meaningful relationships rather than superficial connections. I know that when I have my community to support me, I feel stronger, I feel encouraged, I feel empowered. That's what I really love about our community at Core Motivations, is that we're all about helping each other through these self-care and self-love techniques. And then there's the purposeful home life balance, where we're having that mindful organization. So perhaps trying to break down household chores into small, manageable tasks, such as 20-minute sessions. It creates being more in control and less scattered. I think that sometimes I do that I'm forgetting that I don't have to do the whole thing all at one time. As well as there are simple therapies through physical regeneration by exploring modern low impact restorative therapies and including things like compression boots or infrared light therapy. Now, while I haven't tried those, we do have a pool. And so now that the weather's a little nicer because our pool's not heated, wah, poor me, right? I started doing pool exercises. And what I like about that is it takes away that body pressure, of that impact that you feel like when you're walking or running or even weights. Now, you'd be surprised. It is a very hard workout in the pool. One final of the day, soft goals, process over outcome. So what we can do is say things like, I'm learning to focus on habits, or I'm learning to cook, not I will be a chef. See the difference there? I'm exploring, trying new things without pressure to be perfect. These are soft goals. I practice focusing on consistency rather than achievement. Remember, flexible routines, they happen by allowing variation based on your energy level. It removes that pressure. All in all, our goal is about finding new ways to practice self-care in this new year and beyond. And now, our favorite, the legal stuff. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute professional advice. This podcast is not a substitute for medical care. The materials, movies, videos, or books referred to in this podcast are recommendations only. Join me each week for all things Enneagram, self-care ideas, self-love patterns and rhythms, share ideas from other reputable authors, doctors, and my favorite podcasters. Thank you for being here with me today on Core Motivations Podcast. Now, we're counting on you to help spread the word about our little corner over here at Core Motivations. So hit the follow button, share this episode with someone, and please leave a review. You can find me, Michelle, on Instagram at coremotivations_coach or through email, michelle@coremotivationscoach.com. So let me leave you with this. Until next time, and as always, I'm rooting for you.